during Castro's day in Cuba. All of these people just fleeing for their lives and just going the 90 miles or something, what it is between Cuba and Florida. And a lot of them not making it, and people that made it didn't know what was in store for them. And we accepted them as immigrants. We weren't going to send them back. It was not that way. Unfortunately, current events now just kind of surreal in a lot of ways, but demonization rearing its ugly head again, and for no justifiable cause.
Welcome back, everyone, to yet another episode of Kingdom of Dreams podcast, The Making of Stories. I'm your host, Jawad Mir. Today, my guest is David Robbins, who I've had the pleasure of having on this podcast 4 times. One of my favorite podcasts to date features him, which is Dead Man Walking. But today he's here to talk about King of California, starring Michael Douglas, which came about 12 years ago. A beautiful little film about a father and a daughter and search for gold. And there's so much history and so much relevant topics from today's time in our society that are unfolding, not just in the United States, but all over the world. Lovely conversation. David is always a pleasure to talk to. And we also talked about the music that he did for a play called Topsy Turvy in LA, which his brother Tim Robbins directed, who also directed Dead Man Walking, and who's Andy in Shawshank Redemption. Met him as well. Beautiful play as well. So they have had several tours, and they're going to have many more. But without further ado, here's my conversation with David Robbins for King of California.
Good morning.
Afternoon for me. How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Um,
Recuperating?
yeah, today it's like the first day I'm feeling normal after. I mean, when you do these shows, it's like it takes all of your energy, attention. You're up, you're kind of like um, going all the time, and plus the physical part of it, the setting up, the breaking down, um, and once that all gets released, like when you're on the plane coming back, and then you're at home that night, it all just like.
Yeah. I bet
Um,
I've always wondered, like, when people do shows like concerts or plays like this, like sometimes it can be like, you want to chop the last one, but at the same time you get so repetitive. Like, how do you find that balance? So it's kudos to you that you guys can pull that off. And by the way, just for the audience, we're talking about Topsy Turvy, which is directed by your brother Tim Robbins, and you did the music for it. Fantastic play, and thanks for inviting me on that.
thank you. My pleasure. I'm glad you came. It's
Yeah.
a it's a story. It's a current story told in a way that allows you in, so you can not be you're not being preached to. It's about what we've all been through, and opening the door with humor and music. And
100%, 100%. Speaking
yeah,
of music, we're here to talk about the film that you did music for, King of California, starring Michael Douglas. Finished it yesterday. What a beautiful little film, man. Lo Really loved
thanks.
it. Very
I
grounded.
Yeah, I as I told you the other day, I watched it when I knew this was going to be going on. I watched it. It was the first time in 20 years, at least, that I'd seen it, and it allowed that complete um, um, watching it as a first time viewer. Being able to see it fresh without any kind of preconceptions or anything, and so it was pretty damn good movie.
It was. It certainly was. It seemed very personal, as if it's someone's story, personal story of father and daughter, and obviously put it
Yeah.
into a different manner. But I'll tell you one thing, I'll never see Costco in the same light again.
Yeah.
That was really really cool. But your music, man, like as always, stood out, but it didn't stand out. Like it was just on its own, independent, and so rhythmic. Especially the scene when that stands out to me the most when she's pulling him out um,
Yeah.
from under the ground, and when he's
Yeah.
in the water. the as she pulls it out and goes back in, pulls out and goes back in, the notes were switching very back and forth in a not in a
Mm,
necessarily like a cartoony way, but just it just spoke so much, like you could tell that the music was telling a story. So I
mm.
wanted to point that out. That's
Thank
what
you.
stood out the most for me.
Thank you. It was, this is like one of those, I think maybe 5 or 6 times in my career that, I was involved right from the start, In fact, I met this director when I was living up in Ojai, and he lived up in Ojai, and I met him through a director and a writer who, Niels Mueller, and he had, I went to interview him about doing the score for, or he interviewed me, I should say, about doing the score for the movie that he was making called The Assassination of Richard Nixon with Sean Penn. And he ended up going with somebody else. And every time I see him now, he says, I should have hired you. But he turned me on to Michael Cahill, who did this movie, wrote and directed it. And it was his first film. And so we started meeting for lunch every week in Ojai at a local restaurant. And we would trade music ideas, just he'd give me, a CD of what, he had come up with, and I did the same. And it was like a back and forth that was really cool. And we were kind of creating a language for the film, musical language for it, and a musical dressing, I should say, about, what type of approach with instruments and voices and usages and the whole bit. And it was really, I mean, it was kind of the thing I did with Tim, and well, definitely the same thing. And anyway, and then pre-production, we did the on-screen uh, playing an upright bass part that Michael Douglas does. So we had to do pre-recordings for that. So it was like, we had some options about what he was going to play. And what he ended up playing was a theme that I had written, and this is a solo version of it, and um, it gets embellished with other instruments as that piece goes on. But um, that was one of the cores of it. And it was and then during production, being there on set when Michael is doing the bass, and he, of course, he didn't know how to play it, and I kind of helped him get to some semblance of looking like he played it. But it was also, like the shooting tricks, that they do, as far as, not belaboring on finger work or anything like that. It's all about face. Um, and then afterwards, obviously, creating the score. And uh, one of the things that hit us early on when we were trading music was Jolie Holly, Julie Holland, excuse me, the
Mm.
singer-songwriter. And uh, there was this one particular song called "Darling Ukulele," and it kind of stuck in my head, and I ended up writing the whole score on ukulele. Um, and orchestrated it as it needed. But there was that element, and then the other key element was um, Native American drumming and percussion, and the third element was a glass harmonica, which is that ethereal kind of sound. And I had to find somebody that played it, and it was a guy that used to do. He'd play it at Disneyland, outside, and it's a fascinating. It's
Wow.
like spinning glass discs, right? And in that spin in a bed of water. And as he touches it with his fingers, it causes that rub, when you do the rim of a glass type of thing. And but it's all tuned, so it's like a piano, or piano or an organ or what have you, but it's with spinning plates. It's great. And So those are the three main things that kind of constituted it. and also, other funky instruments like pump organ and whistling, which I did all of it. And it was a lot of
Really?
fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My dad taught me how to whistle when I was really young.
Yeah, I still don't know how to whistle.
And
That's awesome. And tell me, how big is your normal, like, one of the things I really love, I was going to ask you, but then you kind of answered as I was thinking it. Because back in the day, now you can find, like, when you're composing different music and stuff, like you want to look for some ethnic music or different parts of the world, we have online, you just search and Google or Facebook or whatever, everybody's there. But back in the day, it wasn't like that. But the fact that you were able to find someone outside of Disney World and how to integrate that, that's pretty cool, man.
yeah, I always, whenever aside from what you can find online, there's also all the sampling libraries that composers
True.
use a lot, and they've gotten better and better and better. For better or worse, there's two sides of that coin, um, two different opposing thoughts about is it good or bad. And But I always tried with everything I did to find uh, players that played the instruments rather than using samples, because no matter how good you are at manipulating samples and how good the sample libraries are, it's still not human, you know. And there's that imperfection of human playing that
Hmm.
and the noises that, like, different instruments make. Like that pump organ. He's pumping and you're hearing that a little bit with it, and it's just so imperfect. And that's what makes that's what really is, to me, is a magic of doing music for film and doing music in general. And it's that human imperfection and that just that soul that player's ability that comes through player's ability. And anyway, it
No, no, that's great, man. That's awesome. What was it about the script? I mean, I can guess, but the script is very grounded, like very tight in terms of characters. Um, you know, Dialogue is incredible, and Michael Douglas delivers perfectly. Like I have never felt for a second he was acting.
right.
What was it about the script, aside from the full story, if you remember? I know it's been a while, that may have struck you that, other than just doing work, getting work for a film, that felt personal or it hit home in a way.
Well, a lot of it is historical. I mean, the element of it of the first Spanish settlers and the church and the priests that were trying to convert the native population, which were basically Chumash Indians,
Yep.
and the legend of this buried gold, this gold that was mysteriously disappeared, the doubloons, and that's what uh, Michael Douglas's character. It's just that character of this guy's kind of off the rails. I mean, the first scene is him coming out of a clinic, that he was had to be there for his mental health, and his daughter, who's played by Evan Rachel Wood, she's a darling. I mean, she's such a great actress. And anyway, getting back to this, the what I keyed into was that history and also the change, the environmental change of the valley, the San Fernando Valley, which is where this is based, and how when he built his house so many years ago, there was nothing around him. And slowly but surely, it kind of came in and it became urban sprawl or suburban sprawl, rather. And there's all these kind of, cookie cutter houses and condos that are uh, coming in on him. And it's like his way of life is gone. To him, it's like it's all gone. and he can't handle it, and he wasn't able to handle it, and anyway, he gets this crazy idea, and he starts going like berserk, not berserk, but just totally focused on trying to find this gold that is a myth, and the lengths that he goes to, just this whole kind of thing just roped me in and said, I can definitely, I this is going to be fun to do,
Yeah.
because it's so rich with possibilities, and playing with um, the instrumentation, and how these different, from Native American flutes to the percussion, to the all the just kind of, and the ukulele, it's a soprano ukulele. It's just like, but it made, the way the ukulele is tuned is different than a guitar. And I found that by playing and just like ruminating on the ukulele, I found that it made my brain think a different way. And I would compose where I wouldn't have been able to compose that on piano or guitar. It wouldn't just
Mm.
would have come out different. And the ukulele kind of brought that out. And that's something that was really a great fun discovery, and the director was all for it, bring it in. It's like that thread that goes through the whole score. And yeah, it was a special project, and Michael and I are still friends today. And I did his last movie called Adopting Audrey, and he did that during COVID. I mean, I scored it during COVID. He shot it just before COVID, and he calls me up, um, and I'm sitting around here, pulling my hair out during COVID, the lockdown. He says, "So how you doing? Blah 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 blah. Are you busy?" I said, "Not really." He says, I've been working on this movie for a year editing, and I realized that now, I wanted to do it without any music. And I said, it's not going to work without music. So are you busy and you want to write a score?" I said, sure. So
That's
anyway,
awesome.
and that was a lot of fun too. I mean, he and I are very synced as far as music, and just, the sky's the limit as far, nothing, it's like oddball stuff, just kind of out there stuff, but there's something about it, I mean, the
Yeah.
other thing is that Jolie Holland, I didn't know her at all, but we kind of got it in our head that we wanted her to come and sing, and write the lyrics and sing to that melody that Michael Douglas plays, that upright bass theme. And I found her, and she said sure, and she came down, and right there in the studio, she wrote her the words that are in it. It's called what was it? Dreams. Oh God,
Field of
Flood of Dream. Flood of
yeah,
Dream.
Flood of
Yeah,
Dreams.
and it was a great experience, and her voice is so unique that it was very compelling, and it was perfect for this movie, and we use it on the end credits, but it kind of ties a nice bow into it because you've heard the theme before,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and uh, she got it, and that's another friendship that's lasted over the years, so.
That's awesome.
We
That's
we've done
very cool.
several things together, Jolie and I. So it's just a really rich and special experience overall.
Yeah. Or maybe one day we'll have to have all three of you together.
Okay.
But going back to the film, man, what I loved about among many things in terms of the story was the way it ended. You know,
Hmm.
we're talking about like how the Spanish came, and you know, if you look at the history of humanity, if you go as far as back as from the beginning of time, you know, there's always after a few hundred or several hundred or thousand years, every piece of land shifts in terms of who used to be there and who is there, right? And you look at Christopher Columbus or the Spanish people, you know, discovering North America, and then in the film, I mean, because it's an old film, I'll just kind of give it away. You know, she tells these people on the beach, you know, welcome. So it's like a beginning of a new era, and that's what's happening in North America and Europe now. Like, you know, in terms of population being not increasing where the locals are and the people from the other parts of the world are coming. Who knows, in about 100 years, everything will flip. Like, you know, people who used to be in that part of the world will be here and here, there, right? So it's just an
Yeah.
evolution. And I love that in the way that executed in the film. Very simple.
That that thing you mentioned there, which is at the tail end of the movie, it came from current events during the time when that was being written. It was all this kind of fear was ginned up about Chinese being, on ships, and they would stay out like a mile or two out and never come to shore, and these people would jump with what they had and swim ashore and then have their stuff in a bag that tied to them, right? And then once they got on shore, they'd open the bag and dress up, and that's what she sees. And she just like it's a complete surprise. There's no clue about anything. She says, welcome.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm surprised actually the film was made in 2007. And, you know, in terms of how we have started hearing about stories like that, people coming through sea, you know,
Mhm.
in Europe it started after the uprising, the Arab uprising in 2011. And here
Yeah.
it's been happening, but we haven't started hearing about it up until recently, right?
Yeah.
But again, the way it was just executed. I mean, had it been like a, you know, end of the world film, it would have dealt with it completely differently the way it was executed. But it was
Yeah.
just so beautifully because she saw her father in them. That's the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
It's
It,
really well.
it, yeah. Another thing comes to mind is during Castro's day in Cuba. There was uh, all of these people just fleeing for their lives and just going on rafts and rickety boats and just going the 90 miles or something, what it is between Cuba and Florida, and
Mm,
uh, and knowing, and a lot of them not making it, and people that made it didn't know what was in store for them, and you know, we we accepted them as immigrants. We weren't going to send them back. It was not that way. Unfortunately, current events now just kind of surreal in a lot of ways, but all of a sudden it's demonization rearing its ugly head again, and for no justifiable cause, and but anyway,
yeah.
um,
What was one part in the film, whether it was while you were composing it or that you saw in the edit or read in the script, that had a huge impact on you, and that may have changed certain things for you, professionally or personally, or both?
hmm. I think, well, what keyed me in, I mean, the first piece I wrote on that was the opening.
Mm,
And it was, introducing us to the main characters, but it was also a kind of a commentary on the way it was, the way it is, or the way it was in the valley, and how the valley was gentrifying and expanding and just becoming uh, um, something completely different. And I remember an earlier valley, when I moved back here in 76. And that to me tells that in essence the whole basis of the story is right in that, and there's no words. It's like um, Evan's character is working at McDonald's. She's driving her beat up car to go and going through this uh, plastic fantastic valley buildings and landscape and all that, and going to pick up who is her father coming out of his not an insane asylum but a clinic, I guess. Um, and and then still the theme going, she's picking him up, and and uh, there was a loss there that she had to take care of herself while he was in there, and that was for quite, that was for years, and he had trouble um, uh, accepting that, and he got this crazy idea that was already like bubbling in his head when he was reading books inside the insane asylum, and it was that thing that really got me hooked, right?
Mm,
And it meant something to me. It kind of I it was a familiar scenario for some reason, although that didn't happen to me. It felt familiar, and I keyed in on that. And it starts with a simple tom tom,
mm,
uh, Indian tom tom, and then it builds from there, and in shakers too, which the shakers that I used were actually um, ones that um, a friend of mine who they make instruments that are based on South American natives, tribes that would for their ceremonies. These are ankle shakers where they would wear them on their ankles and do the dance and in time. So I used those shakers on them, and it was um, introducing the element of the native peoples that were here before we came in and changed it all. And I was reading recently about the Chumash, and how they were thousand years old, thousands of years old. They've been there. They were an advanced society. They had seafaring down. They used to live off of the ocean, you know, the Pacific Ocean there, where now is Malibu and Santa Monica and San Diego and so on. They used to travel and hunt on Catalina Island
mm,
from, in their boats that they made that were very efficient. And it's like it it was an advanced situation, very, complex art and culture and bound to the earth and thankful for the what the earth gives and not tempting fate by ignoring that, and so it's a rich and a tragic um, history all in one, and you learn to appreciate that more, when you get an opportunity to read a story or to come across something like this, where Michael obviously, did a lot of research about uh, things of that nature to put in that and give that this story some of that kind of subtle richness, that history in there,
yeah,
and what we've done to uh, that valley, you know, from what it used to be.
yeah.
Uh,
Have you seen the 1923?
Pardon?
Or have you seen 1923 or 1883, the series by
Mm-mm.
uh you should, you will love it. It's
Okay.
similar. It's similar to what we are just talking about, that how technology or businessmen come in and try to take a way. It's kind of like a prequel to Yellowstone, which I haven't seen.
Hmm.
But yeah, sorry, you were talking about that, so I was just reminded. It's like a mini series. One of them stars Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren.
Hmm.
And the other one, I forget the actor's name, but yeah, grade two series, really well done.
I will seek that out. Historic and historical fiction are one of my favorite genres. I literally the last book before the one I'm reading now was James Michener's Alaska, and it's the history of still when the tectonic plates are shifting to form what formed Alaska. He takes it right way back there, before there were really animals of any kind, and then and going through all those stages right up until the I think it was the 80s or 70s when he wrote it, and it's just fascinating, and you learn so much, and a lot of the core of that is based on the Alaskan natives and how they emigrated from emigrated from Asia, from the China and Russia, when the Bering Strait was walkable, before the sea came back up, but that's
Hmm.
just six
Hmm.
miles, 6 miles, and just amazing. And I love that stuff, and I love those stories, and it kind of humbles you in a way, and uh, I think that the net effect for me, anyway, is respect. The respect for different peoples, cultures. It enriches that knowledge and that respect of it, and say, these were not primitives, really. There were everybody, every culture has primitiveness to it, or at one time, but it's not that simple, just to
Yeah,
say, oh, they're primitives. It's just um, it's a shallow way to think of things, I think. Anyway,
yeah.
anyway,
I mean, I was just gonna say
go ahead.
another civilization, if there is civilizations out there, which I believe there are, to them we may be primitive. And then even like in 200 or 500 or 1,000 years or 5,000 years, people will look back at our time and like, how backward these people were. It's just the
Mhm.
evolution and it's just we don't, like you said, it humbles you. Like when you look at history, it humbles you to see how we are such an insignificant dot, in this whole story that's playing. And I think
Yeah,
people need to understand that more because we one of the reasons there's a lot of hate in the world because we always think about ourselves, whether it's at a domestic level or a national level or international level, right? So it's just when you start looking at things from a broader picture, it changes things up.
yeah. It's so true. That spec you talk about is, I mean, our country as it is what, 250 years? That's nothing.
Yeah,
You know, when, in the James Michener's case, in Alaska's case, for instance, the what became the natives, the different tribes of Eskimos, basically, and Inuits and the Tlingits and all the others, they were over thousands of years, their culture developed, and their relationships with other native cultures up in Alaska changed and interwed. And then comes the Europeans with trade coming all the way around South America, up the Pacific coast and Alaska, and they bring the good and the bad with that,
yeah,
and intermarry with some people, and then but there's this kind of you see this thread in all cultures, is that um, that especially this culture that was in Alaska, for instance, it it was the tradition of heritage, and the importance of heritage and not forgetting the ancients, um, honoring them and continuing their way of life as best you know how.
Yeah.
And yeah, it really is humbling, and when if you allow yourself to uh, learn about it, if you let yourself learn about it, you get rid of a lot of baggage about it. It's like, wait, I don't have to fear anybody. I don't have to. Uh, I'm not going to assume something until I know where I'm not going to assume anything about a culture until I know more about it. You know,
Yeah.
then you don't want to assume anything because you want to learn about it. And that's the hunger that I have, and it rewards me in a lot of ways, and
Yeah.
musically as well. I mean, it's like there was always that part of it that I really really hooked into, over the years is the universality of music and from culture to culture, it still is all based on folk music, the local people telling their stories from generation to generation through song and dance and music. And that is a reason, there's a reason why it's passed from generation to generation because it's true. It's a truth and a passion and that is what I have keyed in personally all my life, and found more and more as I got older, the importance of that as core, in all from wherever you are in the world. I always, wherever I go, I always am looking first to see what the folk music is. And I want to hear that. I want to see it being played. I want to see it being danced, the whole bit. So it's never failed me when adapt, and I infuse it and use it, use elements of all of that with how create music. And it's never failed me. And
Yeah.
it makes it really enjoyable when you open yourself up to not dictating what something's supposed to be musically for a story or a film or what have you, of a play. It's to allow it to speak to you, and that inspiration will come, and it's through all of what I know and have wanted to learn about. It comes out that way. And it's it means a lot, and it's rich, and I wouldn't want to do it any other way. Not your formula guy.
No, no, I know, and that's why we appreciate your work because when you go into the roots of anything, whether you're an engineer, a music composer, whatever, you know, at the end of it, it's always the original authenticity that needs to shine out, even if it's like several thousand years later or two. And music, it is such a beautiful language because, I can play a very popular song in Vietnamese or in Swahili or in, Norwegian music. Like it just speaks to you. I'll send you a link of this. There's a it's in its like 16th season, but last two seasons they start producing original content. It's called Coke Studio. So there's
Mhm.
one like Coca-Cola, like Coke Studio, and there's
Yeah.
one based in Pakistan and one based in India. But one in Pakistan you'll appreciate more because they really now for the last 2 years they have been going to different parts of their nation and just finding people who have never been discovered and their
Hmm.
music has never been told. and they did this one song which was half in English, half in Pashto, which is the Afghan language, and they did one song which was in Urdu and half in Norwegian. And they were saying the exact same thing, but on the same rhythm, on the same tune. And I don't
Hmm.
even care if I understand it or not, but it was just so beautiful, right? And
Yeah.
that's what you're saying.
Yeah. And it was like that. I had that experience with Dead Man Walking as well.
Yeah,
And when Tim is writing lyrics for The Face of Love, and Nusrat is writing his lyrics, and we find out later that they're pretty much the same thing. They said the
yeah,
same thing. Just, that happens, that stuff really happens. It's not fancy. It's there's a truth out there that is universal, and anyone can tap into it if they want to, but it takes diligence and desire to do it.
yeah.
And please send me that link. I would love to hear that.
Yeah, I will. Speaking of King of California, one thing I don't know if this was intended to do. I thought it was kind of funny because it reflected the African Americans in the society, that how they
Hmm.
hire this one guy to disable the alarm, and he's the only one that gets busted by the police.
Yeah.
You know, I thought that was quite the way it was executed too. He was, his gas was running out. He's slowing down. The look on his face, it was just masterful.
Pepper is the character's name. He
Yeah.
actually, the character in the story is an old jazz cohort of Michael Douglas's character. Charlie is an over the hill kind of jazz bass player, right? And Pepper is one of his oldest friends that he used to play with, and they kind of like commiserate from time to time. And
Yeah.
Michael's character pulls him in, and yeah, he's the guy. The guy that gets busted, but gets busted with a smile on his face.
Yeah, he's used to it. He's used to
Yeah.
it. Amazing. Anything on the horizon, David, that you're looking to do, or besides Topsy Turvy, the play?
I'm well, that's probably going to reemerge next summer, or it's looking like it might, as another tour, European tour, but that's to be determined but it's looking like there's a start of that building to something really cool. Other than that, um, I've been writing with a couple of people with songs and collaborating just to kind of um, keep that itch that I have. And as far as movies, I'm always looking, and there's just not too much out there right now for me, for people like me, and that's okay. But it I'm here, and I want to keep doing this. That I still feel like a kid in a lot of ways, and I'm going to keep doing this. I'm not, there's no such word as retirement to
Yeah,
me.
awesome. That's really good to hear. That's
Yeah,
really good to hear.
there's no
No, that's
such thing.
amazing, man. I,
You're going to have
you
to
gotta,
force that on me.
no, you gotta keep doing what you're doing because the world is already conspiring against you. Not you as in you, but just people in general when they get older.
Collectively, yeah.
It's just the way the world works, and
Yeah,
sometimes we're part of that conspiracy too. But it's just, you got to stay relevant. You got to keep at it because if you can't take care of yourself or look after yourself, nobody else will. So
yeah. Well, just a
amazing.
lot in the spirit of that. Actually, today I finally buckled, and I'm gonna replace my computer system after 15 years. 10 years, something like that. And because it's been obsolete for about 3 years, the way things go with this stuff these
Yeah,
days. But I'm gonna say goodbye to this old trash can over here, and um, keep it going. It's I I have two closets full of instruments, string instruments, banjos and guitars and mandolin, a lot of percussion instruments. I have, Mexican guitarron, I have, which takes up a lot of space. But and various kind of little keyboard things, and it's just when I want to, just want to play, I'll just go in there and pick something, bring it out and start fiddling with it, and sometimes that turns into something. And
Of course.
um it's kind of like it's my profession, but it's also my hobby, you know. And for now it's theater, but it's I can't wait for that next opportunity and that project to come along, um,
Mm.
and make a movie um, that I will be proud of doing, putting my part into it. And so far so good on that thing. I mean, most of the things that I've worked on, fortunately, are projects that um, I can look back at and say, yeah, that was good. I don't know how the hell I wrote that, but
Yeah. And
but yeah,
and also it's the projects that you have worked on that I have seen and that we have spoken about, right? King of California, Dead Man Walking, the
I think
Kashmir
there's
film.
five now. Yeah,
Five now?
Kashmir,
Okay. Kashmir one. Oh yeah, and then there were two other the Bosnia one. I forget the name of that film. The one with Dennis
Savior,
Quaid,
Savior,
Savior. And then the Tim Robbins film, the one that you did the music
Cradle
on.
will rock and
Yes, the
Dead Man
Cradle
Walking.
Rock. Yeah. So all of those films, what's so great about them, you can watch them in 500 years from now and they will hold their
Hmm.
significance, right?
Yeah,
And that's very rare for films. And sadly, the films like that, they don't really do that well when they come out, or people don't recognize them, or they don't like them. But similarly with Shawshank, which your brother was in, people nobody cared for it at the time, but then it ended up winning all these Oscars. So you're in the right space. I mean, either you want to have, make a lot of money, be a lot of very famous, which is great, but if your work doesn't live forever, then once you're gone, right? So
yeah.
you're in
Well, for me,
you're
it
in a good
wasn't.
boat. I
Yeah,
know,
for me,
I
it
know.
wasn't a conscious decision, but it was the way it worked, and I'm glad it did. And I don't care that I didn't become doing A-list all the time. It might have made me into something else that I didn't want to be. Who knows?
100%.
I'm
I
happy
agree
the
with you.
way it's going, and I can't complain.